So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Sunday morning celebration. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I'm glad you're all here watching now, or for those of you who'll be watching later. And I want to begin, like we always do, just say that if you've never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith. You're welcome here. And so we're going to begin the service today with my wife Becky as our practitioner, opening us up with a prayer, and then Ed Powers, our board secretary, actually is going to do a spiritual reading. So Beck?
Okay, so I just invite all of us to turn within.
Excuse me, if everybody could go on mute, and also if you could go on speaker view, we won't see all the names. We'll just see whomever it is that's speaking. It'll make it a little easier. I'm sorry, Becky.
That's okay. Okay, so we're ready now. And so I just invite everybody to turn within to that place of peace, leaving behind all of this morning's activities and just allowing us to be in this silence, to be in this place of love. And just knowing that this infinite spirit is right here, not only within us, but as it's expressing through us and for us, right here, now and forever. And I am knowing my oneness in this infinite peace, this infinite love. And I'm knowing this for each person here this morning, that this wonderful divine expression is expressing itself so easily and clearly. I'm knowing that as this morning unfolds, that this divine energy of love unfolds with each of us. I'm knowing that right here and right now that this wonderful divine spirit is expressing itself through Reverend Dr. Ron's message, through his words, through his actions. And that this wonderful, infinite spirit is spreading its love in this community, through this nation, throughout this planet. The healing energy that is this infinite love. And so knowing this to be so, and knowing that this morning is unfolding in its love, in its truth, that it is a blessing for us all. And I release it and just know that it is done, and so it is.
Thank you, Beck. Ed?
In my reading today, I have a couple of quotes, and then the first quote is from a Bengali Indian named Igor. You may have heard this one. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service is joy. End quote. I believe to live a good life, one must see themselves as good and worthy. And I also believe that you cannot serve another with the intention of making their lot better without also generating those internal feelings of good and worth. So going to close with a quote from Mike Dooley. Says, service happens anytime you engage the world. To live and follow your heart, therefore, is to serve.
Thank you, Ed. So good morning again, everybody. And my title today is, what does it mean to live a good life? And I came up with it. A friend of mine, Reverend David Bruner in San Jose, he put that question on Facebook. And I answered it back, kind of a Facebook answer. I put to love and be loved. And then Becky and I talked about it, and I said, wow, this is a really deep question. Why don't we examine it on Sunday, and it'll be good for when we get together after the message and just share. So I want to begin with two quotes from Ernest Holmes. The first one, he wrote, every longing and yearning you have ever had, every secret desire of your soul, every constructive ambition you have ever had is a whispering of this life, assuring you that you are one with life. The second quote, he wrote, the desire you have to be something, to do something, is a mental echo in your mind of the spirit which already exists within you. And what I took away from them is, that spirit, we're one, we're so connected with spirit, and we can always call on spirit to be with us and show us how we can live the best life possible for us. And also that each of us is born, and I'm going to speak about this a little later, with a gift that we have to give. And when we take time to listen to life, we hear what that is, and we can see ways that we can give it. Cherie Carter Scott is a spiritual writer, a psychologist, and in one of her books, she says that in this country, the cultural definition of success is power, money, and fame. Power, money, and fame. And she said, if you have those, you're successful. But there's a problem with that definition. And the problem is that it's limited, that it leaves out people who have realized their dreams that have been set from within rather than without, and rather than by societal norms. So, think about that. Think about teachers who are called to be with our children. Think about volunteers in hospitals. Think about scientists who spend their life trying to find a cure for cancer. So what is success for one person may not be for another. Each one of us is our own judge. And Cherie gives some examples of what people might consider success. For instance, some people might consider it autonomy in their job. And she tells a story in the book about a lady who she asked what would be the perfect job. And she said, one where I could bring my dog to work. And for her, that was autonomy. For some people, it's financial freedom. For some people, emotional fulfillment. For some, it might be glory. Like a lot of athletes seem to really thrive on that. And for some, it's making a difference. So ask yourself, what does success mean for me? What does success mean for me? And I'm sure we all know people whose idea of success is keeping up with the Joneses. And when you do that, when that's your idea, you're giving up your life and your assessment to other people, your power to other people. But when your life is in alignment with your values and with your inner truth, you honor your presence here on earth with meaning and with authenticity. I was reading some Eckhart Tolle, this week. And Tolle says, advertising people know how to sell things to people that they don't really need. They don't need it, but advertising people can get people to buy it. And he said, what they need to do is convince them that they will add something to how they see themselves, how other people see them. Or put in another way, they get them to buy things that the people think will add to their sense of self. And what keeps our consumer society growing is none of that stuff works. It doesn't work. And so we need to keep coming back for more and more and more. And we really, in the deepest level, can't honor those things if we try to find ourselves through them, because that's not what spirituality does. That's what the ego does. And Tolle goes on to say how so many people believe and are dependent on what happens to them or what they have to be happy. And he said, those people are dependent on form, and happiness is really unstable because it changes all the time. I was thinking about that. Becky and I wanted to go out and do something yesterday, and it started to rain, and so we were kind of unhappy. Later, it got better, so we were happy, and we did go out for a ride. It's kind of maybe a silly example, but it gives you an idea. Happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes. And the joy of being can't come from form. It can't come from possessions. It can't come from achievement. It can't come from other people. It can't come from an event, or it can't come from anything that happens. It comes from within. It comes from within. Let me give you an example, a story that Iris Krasno has in one of her books. And she went to see one of her children's teachers, and the teacher was really happy and said, today's my birthday. I'm 64 years old. And she said, I love my life. I love it. She talked about how she comes from a family of achievers, and one of her siblings was a doctor, and I forgot what the other one, I think a PhD, and her parents were always disappointed that she only had one degree and was only a teacher, only, until her mother came and watched her in the classroom one day, and saw the inner joy, not just that she had, but that she gave to other people. And this woman said, I know lots of people who have lots of degrees and have written millions of articles, she said, but they have no connection with themselves or with other people. There's no heart, and there's no soul in their lives. They're successful on paper, and they're successful in other people's eyes, but that doesn't matter. She said to her, what success means is that she can't wait to come to work every day. And she said, let me quote, she said, to me, success means I can do work that gives me pleasure, a pleasure that helps me grow at every age. So here's a couple of questions that we can ask ourselves if we want to see what it is that can bring us inner joy and success. This one that I'm sure we've all heard a million times, who am I? Or what do I want to be? Is it time to quit my job and start living my dream? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? I saw something interesting about Tony Robbins this week, and I know that Ginny has a good friend who works for Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins said, when you want to make a change in your life, you've got to raise your standards. You have to raise your standards. And he said, when people ask him what made the biggest difference in his life, he says the most important thing in changing his life was what he demanded of himself. He said, I wrote down all the things that I would no longer accept from myself in my life. I wrote down all the things that I would no longer tolerate in my life. And I wrote down all the things that I desired to become. And it reminded me, I've told this story before, but I hope not for a long time, about when I lived in Southern California. I had a friend who was very successful. He in lots of ways. He had a wonderful job, a wonderful life, and everything about him spoke success. And one day I heard that he was moving from Southern California to Cleveland, Ohio, or some city in Ohio. And I called him up and I said, hey, Scott, what's making you move from here? It's so gorgeous here. Your life seems to be terrific. Well, what's pushing you to move? And he said, you know what it is, Ron? Life is too long. And I started to laugh. I said, Scott, most people say life is too short. And he said, no, think about it. Life is too long. He said, I met somebody and I've fallen in love. And she has a great job where she lives. And he said, what I thought to myself was, whenever it is I decide to retire, I am going to live for a really long time. The way medical science is and the way nutrition is, I'm going to live for a long time. And if all I have is work and nothing else, it's going to be a very empty retirement. But life, that's why I say to you, life, Ron, is too long, because I want to live in a different way. I want to live with what's important for me in my heart and with love. And I'm really looking forward to the move. Martha Graham, the dancer, wrote that we all have a vitality. We all have an energy, and it's translated through us into action. And she said, because there's only one of us, that it's unique. And if we block it, if we don't bring it forth, it will be lost forever. Nobody else can bring our particular gift, and the world won't have it. And she said, it's not our business to determine how valuable it is. And it's not our business to compare it to other people's. She said, the only thing our job is not to block it, and let it come forth. So I read actually a couple of blogs by somebody named Jonathan Fields this week. And I also saw a video where somebody interviewed him. And Jonathan's written a book called How to Live a Good Life. And one of the things that he believes and that he teaches is he believes that life he looks at life from the standpoint of 3 buckets. And so let me tell you about the buckets. The first bucket is contribution. And that's how we bring our gifts into the world. And it could be through our work, but it doesn't have to be. It could be through how we volunteer, through our hobby, whatever it is, it's how we bring that gift that I spoke about before and that Martha Graham spoke about, how we bring it into the world. The second bucket is connection. And that's the relationships that we have with family, with loved ones, with friends, with colleagues, and with God. And the third bucket he calls vitality, and that's our state of mind and our body. In other words, our mental acuity and our health. And all of these buckets are interrelated. And he goes on to talk about the 3 laws of the buckets. The first law is the buckets leak. The buckets leak. And he said over time, they get dinged, they get separated, and they leak. And so we can't fill them up only once and think that they're topped off for life. He said, if we leave them alone, they'll run dry. And our job is to keep filling them as needed and never ignore one long enough for it to go dry. So he's saying, all of the areas, the buckets are areas of our life. All of those buckets, what we contribute, our connection with other people and our health and vitality, we have to keep working on them, keep filling them up. Don't let one go bad, because this is the second law. The emptiest bucket will draw the others down with it. So if we're not in good health, it's hard to have good relationships or be giving our gifts in any particular way. He said, so as the buckets are connected, you can't fill one unless the others are filled with it. And you can't ignore one for very long, because like he said, if you ignore one, it'll go dry. And that affects everything else in your life. And the third law of the buckets is that the buckets never lie. The buckets never lie. He said very often we will bring an intentional delusion to how filled the buckets are. In other words, we'll believe that the buckets are more filled. We'll delusion ourselves into thinking that the buckets are more full than they are. And he said, if one runs dry, all the excuses in the world won't help fill it up. He said, empty is empty. Empty is empty. And you can't think it full. You've got to live it full. And in one of the blogs I read, he told an interesting story about himself and what he values most. So I think he said this was in 2012. He was the keynote speaker somewhere, and there were 500 people in the audience. And somebody said to him, what inspires you? Somebody raised their hand and said, what inspires you? And he said, he wrote, nobody in the audience knew that he had a piece of paper on his computer monitor that nobody else can see. And it was there to remind him what really mattered in life. He said, I knew that I could crash and burn on this stage, but that piece of paper would make it all okay. And what was it? On that piece of paper was a heart drawn by his 10-year-old daughter. And he said, I knew no matter how this keynote went, when I came home, she'd be there to kiss me and to give me a hug that said, Daddy, you're everything I need. And he said, when I told that story to the audience, I nearly burst into tears. And so did about half the audience. I've said this before. There's a story about Gandhi that he was on a train one day and a reporter was running after the train and said to him, Mr. Gandhi, what is your message for the Indian people, Gandhi's response was, "My life, my message. My life is my message." And really, that's true for all of us. And so I would just ask the question, if your life is your message, what would the message be? I want to close with something from Thoreau, who wrote, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dream and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. If you have built your castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put a foundation under them." Thank you for being here this morning. God bless you, and have a great week.